What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. I am your host, EJ Holland. We're just 2 weeks away from National Signing Day. It's crazy that this cycle in the football season is almost over. So we're going to be answering all of your questions tonight as we head into signing day. Before we do that, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. Get notifications every time we drop new videos. Michigan's been picking up some commitments lately, so don't miss out on breaking news. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's completely free. And if you want even more Michigan recruiting information, make sure to head over to thewolverine.com today. You can sign up for $1 right now, and we'll even throw in a free subscription to The Athletic. So make sure to head over to thewolverine.com. Click sign up and get your dollar deal today. Speaking about dollar deals, man, Dollar Shave Club, our presenting sponsor. When you rep your team, don't stop at the jersey. Dollar Shave Club's collegiate razor handles combine grooming with glory, letting students, grads, and fans show their school spirit and style. From the sink to the stadium, shave with school pride. Visit dollarshaveclub.com to grab your college handle today. And you don't even need to sign up for anything. You can just order one of these, or if you like Dollar Shave Club, you want even more razors, you can. But one of these special premium maize and blue Michigan razors, just $8, man. So get the University of Michigan Diamond Grip handle over at Dollar Shave Club. Again, it just costs $8. You can't beat that. So head over there and represent Michigan in the shower, in the sink, and anywhere you go. So you can travel with it. It's a great deal. $8. Can't beat that. All right, guys. So last housekeeping items. Remember, if you want to ask more than 3 questions, every user is limited to 3 questions. If you want to ask more than 3 questions, you have to use a super chat. If you want to skip the line, you can also use a super chat. Those super chat, the super chat money that we collect goes directly to my travel budget, so I can continue to see top Michigan commits and targets. And I have a big one this week, Markel Dabney against Savion Hyder. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, if we don't have super chats, we will go in the order in which the questions came. And Tyson Smith was first, and he was here bright and early at 1 o'clock. And he says, are we flipping Haven Finney? If not, who else is even on the board at corner? Yeah, so I think right now, Michigan is still the biggest threat to flip Haven Finney away from LSU. He has stayed committed to the Tigers despite the firing of Brian Kelly. But I think Michigan, even before Kelly was canned, Michigan was already in constant communication with Finney. They visited him when they played LSU out in Los Angeles. So Lamar Morgan spent some time with him and his family. He's been to Michigan before. He made an extended visit in the spring. They are working to get him on campus for the game against Ohio State here in a couple of weeks. So I think that if that visit happens, Michigan should be in a good spot to flip him away from LSU. So a lot of Michigan's cornerback recruiting and how they'll round out the cycle really hinges on Haven Finney. Aside from Finney, they've been involved with some other guys like CJ Brona, but he's trending to Ohio State, or Corey Adams, who seems to be pretty solid, to Notre Dame. Danny Odom they offered here this fall, who's committed to Nebraska, but he seems like he's sticking. Jamarion Vincent is still hanging around. He's actually the only corner committed elsewhere that's visited this fall. So, the Baylor commit out of Texas, he's still an option, but there hasn't been much movement with him lately. They're tracking some others. Right now, it's really, all aboard the Haven Finney train. So he's the guy they're trying to really close with here. I think they'll be aggressive with NIL. It's all about, whether or not they can get him on campus for that Ohio State game. Tyson Smith says, do you think that Carr is better than Smeagol? How bad is Smeagol? So Michigan picked up a commitment from Tommy Carr this week. 3-star quarterback, in-state, legacy, grandson of Lloyd Carr, younger brother of Notre Dame quarterback CJ Carr. I really like the Tommy Carr pickup. You can see my full thoughts here on our YouTube channel. I dropped a video after he committed, kind of talking about his game. But, with Michigan not having depth in the quarterback room, and you got a glimpse of Jaden Davis this season. He obviously does not look the part. With Brady Smeagol suffering an ACL injury this year, and even before that, he was already tumbling down the rankings, and he was off to a pretty up and down start to his senior season. I think it's smart to get in another capable arm in the room. And I think Tommy can be more than that. Like, it's going to take time. He's certainly a developmental prospect. He's a guy who, doesn't have to come in and start early on in his career. Bryce will be there for, the next 2 years. So I think he's a guy who can sit, wait, polish up, and he could turn into something. He's pretty athletic. He put up some good yardage on the ground. He moves well in and around the pocket. Fairly polished as a passer. I mean, he could still use some work there for sure, but he has the frame. He can add some good weight at the next level. I think there's a lot to like about Tommy Carr. I think he was a true late riser. Yeah, he was committed to Miami, Ohio, but I think he was really undervalued there. I'm shocked, and I said it in that video, I'm shocked that Michigan didn't flip him from a bigger program, because he had such a really good senior year. So, yeah, I like Tommy Carr better than Brady Smeagol, and I'm not alone in that opinion. I don't control Charles Power's mind. For those of you who don't know, Charles Power is the director of rankings at Rivals, and Charles independently ranked Tommy Carr ahead of Brady Smeagol in the updated quarterback rankings. I think Tommy Carr is a couple of spots ahead of Smeagol when it comes to the Rivals quarterback rankings, which I agree with. Again, it's tough when any player suffers an ACL injury, but I also think it's tough to really evaluate that start of his senior season. I think that's, like I said, Smeagol was already tumbling down the rankings. He had several multi-interception games. He was more of a high floor guy who was turning the ball over. So I just like Carr's upside more. I like his athleticism a little bit more. I just think there's more juice with Carr than there is with Smeagol. And I think now you obviously landed Bryce Underwood. You're following that up with, a high upside guy in Carr. You follow that up with Peter Bork, who I think is a top 100 level talent. And now you get to chase the big fish in 2028 in Donald Tabor. If you get Tabor, and I think the future of Michigan quarterbacks is pretty bright. So let's go down to Tyson Smith for his last question. He says, EJ, it's getting close to signing day. Are you sticking with the Michigan beat or flipping back to Texas? I don't know where this Texas rumors coming from, to be honest. I saw it on a comment on another YouTube video that I did. I can't remember which one. I'm not flipping back to Texas. I don't know if I'll ever move back to Texas in my life. Obviously I lived there and I was born there. But I'm always up for new challenges, man. I moved to the Midwest, I moved to the East Coast. I don't really have any desire to go back to Texas. And I enjoyed my time on the Texas beat, but I don't have any desire to, take a step backwards and go back to the Texas beat. So, yeah. Blippy Geitman, I'm sorry. He says, are we ever going to learn about the moving parts surrounding CJ Sadler? Probably not, man. Usually when I say moving parts, and I've been getting this question a lot, it could mean several things away from the field for the most part. And I don't want to, give you guys any fuel for speculation when I list some of these out, because these aren't, I'm not telling you what Sadler's situation is, but some of it can be academic issues, some of it can be character issues, some of it can be familial issues, some of it can be, just politics of recruiting, some things going on behind the scenes. It's mostly never NIL. I'll usually tell you if it's NIL, but it could be a situation where like an uncle's involved and he's trying to get some NIL or some weird thing like that. So it's usually some off the field issue. And again, I don't think it's fair to speculate on any kids off the field issues. So, that's why I always use that phrase. Like you probably won't know. We have a super chat from Sean O'Hara, 199. So we appreciate you, Sean. He gets to skip the line. He says, what cornerback flip targets do we have the best shot with? So like I said earlier in the show, I mean, it's really down to Haven Finney and basically Jamarion Vincent. Jamarion Vincent, again, the Baylor commit from Texas. He's the only flip target who's actually visited Michigan this fall, but there hasn't been a ton of movement lately. Texas has gotten involved there, which is an interesting note. So we'll see if anything progresses with Vincent over the next couple of weeks before signing day. But I think Haven Finney's certainly the one to keep an eye on. Top 100 LSU commit. Michigan's pushing really hard to get him on campus for the game against Ohio State here later this month. So if he does make that trip, I do think that Michigan will be in a good spot there. Blippy Geitman says, how many offensive linemen is Michigan looking to take in 27? So they already have two, Tristan Dare and Louis Esposito. So both of those guys project as more interior guys. Both are really athletic interior guys. I think Louis, obviously, is the son of Louis Esposito, but I think Louis took a really nice step this fall. And I think Tristan Dare's had a really strong season. I'm really shocked that he didn't get a bump in the recent 2027 rankings update. So I think the priority for Michigan is adding a tackle, maybe adding another flex guy. So I think they'll add at least one, probably two more offensive linemen in 27. Looks like we have another super chat, but for whatever reason, I can't pull it up. All right. Our producer, Megan, came through there. AJ Ransom says, and he's contributed $4.99. So shout out to you, AJ. He says, appreciate you being a consistent source for Michigan recruiting, EJ. Well, thank you, AJ. We appreciate you. Blippy Geitman says, who's your prediction for the next commit from 2027? I think a safe bet would probably be Charles Woodson Jr., right? Like, he's probably going to come back for the game later this month. He's the son of Michigan great Charles Woodson. He's been around the program. He made his first visit as a recruit earlier this fall. Michigan is making him a priority, and he's a 3-star guy, so not quite the hype, I guess, of his father, but a really quality player that Michigan didn't just offer because Charles Woodson's his dad. I don't even think Michigan was the first school to offer. They took their time really evaluating him and making sure they wanted to make him a priority. And now that they are, I could see him jumping in the class pretty early. Ben Ricketts says, how do you think Michigan will finish off the 26th class? Well, there's only 2 to 3 spots remaining. So one, they need to add a corner, and we talked about the options there. They really want to add a center prospect. So the two guys to know there are Sean Stover, who's committed to Duke, and Adrian Hamilton, who is committed to Virginia Tech. I think they'll land one of those guys. I'm just not sure which one. So you're now looking at finishing with about 28 recruits. They currently have 26. They could open up a flex spot for somebody like maybe Marcus Jennings, who's a linebacker committed to Pitt from Cass Tech, or Charlie Gillick, who just flipped from Minnesota to Texas. He's a guy they could take as maybe an athlete, but right now I think the focus is on corner and center and finishing at 28. Now, obviously, the wild card here is making sure that Julian Walker stays committed. He's a top 100 edge. He's been committed to Michigan since the summer, but South Carolina hasn't gone away. So right now, I think the storylines to watch are, will they keep Julian Walker? Who will they land at center? Who will they land at corner? All right. Do we have another super chat, Megan? We do. Oh, AJ Ransom back with another one. He says, not trying to speculate, But if Sharon Moore is fired, will it seriously hurt recruiting, even though NIL is strong? I highly doubt that Sharon Moore would be fired. Like, even if they, like, let's just say, like, worst case scenario, like they absolutely lay an egg on the road and they lose to a Maryland team that's like on a big losing streak, and then they lose to Ohio State, and then they lose the bowl game. Like, I still think they would give him another year. So I'm not sure that Sharon is in any jeopardy of getting fired right now. If that were to happen next cycle, like obviously anytime you have a coaching change, it'll have a negative impact initially. Then it'll depend on who Michigan hires at that point. But that's a lot of speculation, since I don't think it'll happen. If someone goes crazy and like they do fire him after this year, in that situation, then it probably wouldn't come until after signing day. So you would have to see which recruits would want out of their, letters of intent, which, they've kind of redid the way letters of intent are done. But anyway, it's more semantics than anything. But anyway, guys could be able to opt out. And then, obviously it would depend on who they hired. But yeah, NIL would still be there. Again, I think that's just a lot of speculation for something that's more than likely not going to happen in the immediate future. All right, Ben Rickett says, which 26 commit do you think will have the biggest impact next year? I think the door is wide open for Travis Johnson to come in and make an immediate impact. I know a lot of you probably said, what about Savion Hyder right away? And yeah, Savion's going to come in. He's going to make a big impact for sure. So Savion's the obvious choice, but I'm going with Travis Johnson just to talk a little bit about him more, since everybody already knows about Savion. But Travis, man, I think he's a guy who can come in and be kind of Andrew Marsh-like from a production standpoint. He can have an Andrew Marsh type of impact. I have Travis graded in the same area that I had Andrew Marsh, the exact same grade, to be honest. But everybody knows how much I like Travis. I mean, he's a big bodied guy at 6'3", 180. And when I say he's like he can have a Marsh-like impact, I'm talking about production. He's not like Andrew Marsh as an actual receiver. He's taller than Andrew. He's more athletic than Andrew, though Andrew's a pretty good athlete as well. But Travis is even more athletic. I mean, he's a legit basketball player. He can jump out of the gym. I mean, he's a guy who's so smooth for being 6'3". You can watch it on tape. Like, he's smooth in and out of breaks, like no issue sinking into his hips and getting out of there. Like, that's a struggle for a lot of bigger bodied wide receivers. Now, I think Andrew is more physical than Travis is. And I think that Andrew was so polished as well. Andrew spent so much time dedicated to football, whether it was off-season training or 7-on-7 or whatever the case is. He was always around football. And Andrew was a name that I remember hearing Andrew Marsh was a name I remember hearing when he was like an 8th grader. Travis had a different path. Travis, to my knowledge, had no personal wide receiver trainer. He did some 7-on-7 events, but a lot of his focus was on basketball. In fact, Travis took a break from playing football and then returned a little bit later on. So he, despite being kind of raw, I guess, like he's still fairly polished as well, though I think Andrew probably had him beat in that area. But I think Travis has maybe even more upside than Marsh because of that break, because he didn't have the constant, football all the time type of mentality that Marsh did. So Travis is a guy, man, like he's had such a great senior year as well. You've seen the highlight. Well, if you haven't, check out the highlights here on the YouTube channel. Every time I've gone to see Travis play, he has completely balled out, and he's doing it at the highest level of competition in the state of Virginia. So I think with the need at wide receiver, it's a no-brainer that Travis can come in and be an immediate impact guy, along with fellow Virginia native Savion Hyder. Michelle Wallace says, have you ever seen Tommy Carr play? I have not. I do have a subscription to the NFHS network, which is its own issue. But anyway, I do get to see replays of high school games. So I did go back and I watched his playoff game against Cass Tech over the weekend. He had a couple of interceptions, which was kind of uncharacteristic. He actually only threw 5 interceptions the entire season. So I think that, some of the stuff I saw from that game was pretty impressive aside from the interceptions. Like I said, the mobility was certainly there. He's a guy who's just kind of, I think Charles Power put it like this, but he's just naturally accurate. He has a pretty smooth throwing motion. He places the ball really well at all levels. He doesn't have this rocket arm, but he has really, really good ball placement, I would say. Again, at all 3 levels, he can hit the short, intermediates, and deeps. So, yeah, I like what I saw from Tommy Carr. Like I said, really, really high upside, but unfortunately, I did not get to see him, up close in person. Ben Rickett says, anyone to keep an eye on that Michigan is pushing for late in the cycle. Yeah, like I said, the focus is more on corner and center. If they make room for somebody like Charlie Gillick, he would be a guy to keep an eye on. I know the staff really likes him. And like I mentioned earlier, he flipped from Minnesota to Texas, but maybe if Michigan comes calling here late, they could change his mind once more. Michelle Wallace says 2027 recruits Noah Roberts, Brayton Feaster both said good things about the Michigan Wolverines. Have you heard anything about their recruiting? Yeah, Noah Roberts is a top 100 running back out of Arizona. Really like him, has some great verified track times. I think he would be a great compliment to a guy like Savion Hyder. Michigan is definitely in that top group, and he's already visited. Brayton Feaster, he was on campus. I need to figure out if it's Feaster or Feaster. But anyway, Brayton was on campus, and I had a great conversation with him, his younger brother, who actually picked up an offer while he was on campus, and his father. They all loved their trip to Ann Arbor last month. I think it was at the beginning of the month for the Purdue game. But yeah, Brayton's really, really high on Michigan. I don't think Ohio State's offered. So, the door's open there for Michigan to make a move. I really like him. He plays both linebacker and running back, which is why he's listed as an athlete. Michigan really likes him as a linebacker. Michelle Wallace says, Crew Jones, edge, impressed with Michigan. Wolverines, Trey Smith, Marcus Jennings, Dakota Gorant. Okay, yeah, Crew Jones, he visited for that game as well. He had a lot of good things to say about Michigan. He's an edge out of Utah. Right now, Oklahoma has the Rivals prediction machine lead, but Michigan, again, in that top group. Trey Smith, I honestly don't know who Michelle Wallace is talking about. Marcus Jennings, like I mentioned, he's a linebacker committed to Pitt. With Michigan loading up at linebacker, I'm just not sure they make room for him, but he's still a guy somewhat on the board. Dakota Warant, same thing. Nothing has really changed. Michigan in that top group along with Ohio State. I think they're expecting him to come back for the game. Michelle Wallace tried to ask another one, but remember, you are limited to 3 questions before you have to do a super chat. Tom says, cornerback is a position of need. Out of the top 50 high school cornerbacks, Michigan has whipped. Why? Well, Andre Clark is listed as a safety, but Michigan recruited him as a corner, and he only plays corner at the high school level. So I'm really not sure why he's listed as a safety, other than the fact that he's really athletic and could play safety. But he's a corner commit, and he's a top 200 prospect on the industry. So I wouldn't say that's completely accurate. I mean, it's not like Michigan has struggled to recruit at corner. They landed Shamari Earls, who was a top 100 guy last cycle. Elijah Dotson was considered a corner at one point in the rankings, and he finished in the top 100. Jaden Sanders was a top 300 guy. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that they're willing to invest in NIL here late. And if they get Hayden Finney, it'll be all good. And even if they don't, last year's class was pretty strong. And, I think 27 has a lot of talent at that position. Tom says linebacker is a position of need. Out of the top 30 high school linebackers, Michigan has completely whiffed. Thoughts? Yeah, linebacker is a little different because, they landed Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, but for the most part, they really struggled recruiting the linebacker position last year, and it was more of the same this year. They really struggled to recruit the position. They had to rely on some late risers here, Aiden Reeder and Caden Catchings, and neither of these guys were like super late. Like to me, when I say like late riser, I'm usually thinking of like Jimmy Rolder. And if you remember Jimmy Rolder, he was a guy who's kind of an unknown a bit, and then he exploded and he had like a ton of offers, and Michigan beat them out, to get Rolder. Aiden Reeder and Caden Catchings, they didn't attract as much attention. So I'm not sure that you could classify them as true late senior risers. But they are both guys that Michigan liked on tape. With that said, and then you have Markel Dabney, who's, a high upside guy. With that said, all three of the linebacker takes are 3 stars. I think Brian Jean-Mary struggled this cycle. I'm not exactly sure why. Before his second stop at Michigan, he had a pretty strong track record as a recruiter, but he hasn't been up to par lately. And I think Brian Jean-Mary deserves some criticism, but at the same time, it's not like Michigan's investing a lot of NIL at the linebacker position either. They went after Nick Abrams. They got Nick Abrams back on campus, and they still didn't execute a deal there. So, yeah, I mean, I think Brian Jean-Mary could do better, but I think if Michigan wants to land elite linebackers, they obviously have to pay for them as well. And they have shown more interest in getting linebackers out of the transfer portal. Tom says every team in the Rivals top 10 team rankings has spent more on NIL than Michigan. What happened? Did Michigan run out of money? Tell me I'm wrong. No, I mean, Michigan's Michigan. They're never going to run out of money, especially if you have, a donor like a Larry Ellison. The Michigan's trying to be strategic in the new NIL world, whether you agree with it or not. Sean McGee has a plan. He's trying to balance budget. He's not trying to overspend. He's trying to pay guys on the roster, save up for transfer portal, making sure they're spending on the right guys in recruiting. So you saw Michigan go all in with NIL when it came to the recruitment of Savion Hyder. They've done other NIL deals this cycle as well, but I just don't think they're going to do a free-for-all spending like a Miami or an Oregon or a team like that. Zachary Pizzo says, hearing any rumblings of big visitors for the game yet? I mean, 26 is almost wrapped up. Adrian Hamilton, the Virginia Tech offensive line commit, he'll be there. Haven Finney, they're pushing to get him there. It wouldn't be surprising if he does make the trip to Ann Arbor. 27 will have some big-time guys, 5-star wide receiver Monsoon Sales. They'll probably get Dakota Grant back on campus as well. So I'm sure you'll see that 2027 list grow a lot. Zachary Pizzo, we have a super chat from Michelle Wallace. She says, in-state prospects, how are things going in 2027? Yeah, Michigan's involved with a lot of in-state prospects in 2027. I could see them landing up to, 3, 4, 5, 6 in-state guys. Like they already have one with Louis Esposito. So, they're in a really strong spot for Ricardo Kitchen. I have a prediction in there. I have a early prediction in for Anthony Cartwright. I think they're trending well there. Cartwright's supposed to be another one who's going to visit for the game. So, they're in that top group with Dakota Warrant. They're, in it with a handful of others in their own backyard. So I think Michigan's class in 2027 will be built from the inside out. Zachary Pizzo says, got to be feeling more confident to keep Julian Walker as South Carolina keeps losing. Yeah, I guess, he's continued to really express interest in South Carolina despite the losses. His father is on the strength staff, so I won't be fully confident until he signs with Michigan on signing day. With that said, he will be coming in for the game, and that is a critical visit for 2026. It'll be his mother's first time on campus, so they'll look to impress her, and it'll be his first time on campus since he committed back in the summer. So it'll be important for him to get back around the staff and the commit. So, right now I would lean towards Walker staying in the class because South Carolina has been bad, but like I said, I won't feel comfortable until he actually signs. Zachary Pizzo says, feels like Ohio State has much more recruiting appeal even though Michigan has beaten them consistently, is the better school, is NIL competitive. Why? I think a lot of these kids saw Ohio State win consistently growing up. Obviously, Michigan has changed that here as of late, but I think they saw Ohio State win at a high clip throughout their childhood. And then, Ohio State has a really, really good, they have an elite recruiting department. And I think they're more NIL heavy in terms of just spending freely. Like I said earlier, Michigan kind of has a plan for how they want to do things when it comes to the recruiting aspect and portal and roster management. So, I think that, it's been a lot closer here in recent cycles as Michigan has continued to win on the field. You saw Michigan go head to head and beat out Ohio State for Carter Meadows, for Savion Hyder. Like, they can win those big recruitments when they decide to, when they really decide to prioritize a kid and spend. But they're just not doing that for everybody. Tom says, Brian Jean Mary and Mike Hart walk into a bar. They don't talk to anyone, including the bartender. After a few hours, they leave so that they get drinks. What franchise would you suggest for them? Maybe like Long John Silver's. Like, who even goes there? So that would be a pretty quiet spot. But who would know better than me is Andy Luedecke with MyPerfectFranchise.net. Are you a displaced corporate executive or wanting to put your career in your own hands? Are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? Well, Andy Luedecke can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan and franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. Best of all, his services are 100% free to you. So what do you have to lose? Andy's always available. You can email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net, and he'll even set up a Zoom call with you. Or you can call Andy at 404-973-9901. He can help you with all your franchising needs, and that includes finding some type of franchise that's a bar, like Buffalo Wild Wings. Maybe you could invite Mike Hart there. He's still in the state of Michigan, actually. I saw Mike Hart recently landed, maybe not recently, but low-key landed back at Eastern Michigan as an analyst. So yeah, for those of you who have been wanting a Mike Hart update. But if you want a franchise update, Buffalo Wild Wings is here. You can talk to Andy about that. If you really want a sports bar chain to, bring to another region, please do so with Walk-Ons. If you've never been down to Louisiana, Walk-Ons is the best. So yeah, anyway, let's get into rapid fire. We are past the 30-minute mark. David says, do you think Tommy has a higher ceiling than his brother? Yeah, I think Tommy does have a higher ceiling. I think CJ had a higher floor. Wally says, 2026 for signing day is all that matters. 2027 guys will change their mind a dozen times between then and now. Well, only a couple weeks till signing day, Wally. Wolverine Casual, how are you feeling with Finney? Deadline is getting tight. Surprised we can't close. NIL, we have to play, or we play our freshmen early. Good relationship with Morgan. Seems like everything is there, but still waiting. Well, they have to get them to campus, and Michigan hasn't had the opportunities to get them to campus. They've been on the road here recently. So I think it'll really depend on, how his visit goes if he does make the trip, which, again, I'm pretty optimistic that he will make it to Ann Arbor for the game. And if that happens, I think Michigan will be in a pretty good spot there. Wolverine Casual says, why do you think Zion Robinson didn't get a bump? 88 rating seems very low, practically indefensible in my admittedly biased opinion. I'm really not sure. I think that was the one that really stood out to me. You could make the case, like some guys I listed that were in that rankings range that I thought could move up because they had good years were Markel Dabney. But you could make the case to me that, and linebacker is certainly not my favorite position to evaluate. But you can make the case to me like, okay, Markel Dabney's a boomer bust guy. He's an athlete playing linebacker right now. He's still really raw. We want to keep him as a 3 3-star. Or the other name that I brought up was Tariq Boney. He's had insane production in the WCAC, one of the toughest leagues in America. But you could come back and make the argument to me, he's barely 6'1". He doesn't fit the edge projection at all. He has to be an anomaly like Josiah Stewart. Fine. With Zion Robinson, I think it's really hard to argue against him because he has such great metrics. This is a kid who ran a sub 11 as a freshman. He was a high jump state champion. He's really improved as a wide receiver. He spent the offseason working with former NFL pass catcher Michael Crabtree. He's made strides as a senior. I think he's doubled his yardage as a senior. So I think, Zion's certainly a guy who could still move up. I was really surprised that he did not get any type of updated rating. Wolverine Casual says odds on holding on to Julian Walker. Like I said earlier, with South Carolina struggling, I do think that Michigan is in a good spot as long as the visit goes well, but I won't feel comfortable until he signs. I forgot this was rapid fire. We are way past our time, so we don't want to keep our producer here. Jorge says, any outside chance of flipping Luke Wayfull since his brother is a Wolverine? Jorge, his brother Owen transferred to Penn State, so no. And Luke's pretty solid with USC. Customer service says Sadler or Samson Gash, who's more likely to get in the class? Right now, I'd probably say neither, but I'd probably lean more towards Samson Gash. Michigan did visit him recently. Cleo Horton says, how's the Michigan-Ohio State visitor coming along so far? Like I said, it's going to be limited for 26. We're optimistic Hayden Finney will make the trip. Adrian Hamilton, Virginia Tech offensive line commit, will be on it. Several top-tier 2027s will be on it. Chippo says, go blue. Tom says, any news on Aiden Ack, CJ Brona, Benjamin Izuka? The only name I've heard on Michigan's board is CJ Brona, and that is not trending well. AJ Ransom says, I'm just wondering if Michigan is more NIL protected than most other programs. Like, why would Bryce transfer when he's getting paid regardless of who the coach is? That's true. I think, with a head coach, I don't know how those contracts are structured, though. Like, they could have an opt-out if a head coach is fired, in which they could negotiate with the market. So just a lot of moving parts with contracts and the NIL era. But I think Michigan would with its actual roster would probably be pretty safe with how they can manage NIL. Spotlight 39 Pod says, what's up, EJ? See you in the jungle Saturday. Yes, sir. I am super excited. Louisa County is ranked number 5. Huguenot is ranked number 3. So Huguenot is Markel Dabney's team. Louisa County is Savion Hyder's team. They're going head-to-head Saturday afternoon. I will be there. Spotlight 39 podcast will be there. Hope to see some of you guys. It's going to be a great matchup as long as the weather holds up. Dabney and Huguenot, their defense is only giving up 4.6 points per game. So it will be Savion Hyder's biggest test of the season. Johnny Schultz says, EJ, what's your favorite song to hear someone sing when getting your hair cut or while on an airplane? Well, for some reason, everybody loves to sing to me. I don't know why my life is a musical, but random people sing to me on a daily basis. And I would prefer them to not sing at all. Spotlight 39 says, with the Hokies getting Franklin, how do you feel that will affect any DMV commits, any flip chances you're worried about? No, not at all. I addressed this over at the Wolverine today. The Virginia recruits or commits that are from Virginia are Travis Johnson, Andre Clark, Savion Hyder, Markel Dabney. None of those guys had Penn State in their final group except for Travis Johnson, and he's locked in with Michigan. So I'm not really worried about Virginia Tech trying to make a move with any of Michigan's Virginia commits or DMVs like Tariq Boney, Carter Meadows. They're both locked in as well. John A. Schultz says, Channel Orange or Blonde? I think Channel Orange is the better Frank Ocean album, but I would say I listen more to Blonde. We miss Frank Ocean. Mud Whistle says 40 million in total NIL every year is crazy to finish with a number 12/13 class every year. I don't even know if that's the number, but like I said, I think Michigan has a plan when it comes to roster retention, transfer portal, actual recruiting. So, they have a plan. They're going to follow it. They're not just going to spend freely. And with all the changes with rules that are constant with NIL, I think they just want to have an exact plan. Mud Whistle says, plus no top 200 flips at the end of the season. I mean, Hayden Finney's the guy. If you're going to get one, it's him. Salty Rock 2 says, EJ, what puts Carter Meadows above Julian Walker in rankings? When I watched Julian's senior season film, he looks on that level at as a very similar frame. I would actually say their frames, I mean, they're similar in terms of they're both tall, but like Julian Walker's more filled out and just like a stronger looking guy, which is no surprise since his father is a D1 strength coach. And when you look at Carter's frame, he's added some good weight, but he's still a little lanky. He's a guy who can continue to add a lot of weight, a lot more play strength. I just think the upside with Meadows is better. I think there's more of a ceiling with Meadows. The other thing is that Meadows is much more athletic than Julian Walker. And that's not a knock on Walker. He's pretty athletic too, but Meadows is just, the way he moves is extremely impressive. Like his basketball background, you can notice it on the football field because of the way he bends and he gets under defenders. He's able to play really low when rushing the passer despite being so tall and long. And then talking about long, his length is just freaky. So I think that's what separates Meadows. We have a late super chat from Michelle Wallace, $9.99. You should leave Jaden Davis alone. Your dog. We didn't even mention. I guess we did mention Jaden Davis in the beginning, saying he didn't look the part in the early season. I mean, it's just the truth, man. This is college football. Like, get a grip. Salty Rock 2 says, do you think we end the cycle with any corner flips? Doesn't seem to be a lot on that movement. Like I said earlier, it's really down to Finney, and if anything shakes behind the scenes with Jamarion Vincent. Salty Rock 2 says, I know you aren't a portal guy, but are there any former recruiting misses you'd like to see Michigan pursue again in the portal if they enter it? I mean, I would think some of the, former wide receiver targets, I just can't think of any off the top of my head. Like maybe, like Cam Coleman, who's at Auburn, and would love to see Michigan get involved with him. Or again, it just really depends on who jumps in the portal, which right now it's not open. Doesn't open until January this year, so we still have a long wait. All right, guys, appreciate you all for joining me. Sorry there was no show last week. Had some things pop up with my wife. So make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. I'll be back the next couple of weeks. We'll have, as we get to the week of signing day, we'll have a preview show with Ethan McDowell, who is our other recruiting reporter on the Wolverine. And if you want to find even more Michigan recruiting information heading into signing day, again, you can head over to thewolverine.com, subscribe. It's just $1 right now. Plus you get a free subscription to The Athletic. But yeah, I'll see you guys next week.